soul. Here's a part of me the world may never know. Here's my story. When I lose, I let my guard down. Here's the naked truth. I let my guard down. Here's the naked truth. I let my guard down. I let my guard down. I let my guard down. Here's the naked truth.
My people, this is your boy Monroe, aka He Smiles, your proud host of the Naked Truth Experience. Welcome to December, y'all. We have made it to the last month of 2020, and I know this was no easy task, but we're here, y'all. And as a result of this, I want to celebrate where we've come from. So this month, we are playing throwbacks to the Naked Truth Experience, some of our early days, where we got our origin and our start from, which I'm extremely proud of. And as we prepare for 2021 and a whole new set of episodes, we're going to look back and we're going to pay homage to how we began and how we got here. So I'm excited about December. I'm excited about this opportunity to be with you all every single Thursday of December. And I'm going to be bringing back some friends and some interviews that I really thought that you all should see again. Now, as always, please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe, because we want to continue to spread the message of the Naked Truth Experience. And as always, please go ahead and hop into that Naked Truth Facebook experience. I want you to go ahead and hop into the Naked Truth Experience Facebook group. Yeah, that's a little bit better. So listen, we're not going to have Dan this month, our wine guy, but he will be back for January. So I'm just going to dive right into our throwback episode for this first Thursday in December. Here we talk about family secrets with licensed therapist Dwayne James. He works with adolescents and adults. And I'm telling you all, if you have not seen this conversation between Dwayne James and I around family secrets, it was a two-parter series, and this is part one. You are in for a treat. So sit back, comment, make sure you're commenting, and let's dive into this throwback, family secrets.
Yeah, I want to thank Wazir. So he said if you do it in love, right? Not out of ego and not to be messy. Y'all know that messy auntie. What's up, brother? How you doing, man?
Man, what's up? What's up? How you doing?
Nothing much. I was like, wait a minute, why couldn't my brother join? I'm like, I'm looking, he said he's unable to join. I'm about to go ham on IG. Like, this is my special guest tonight.
You know? Yeah.
It's all good, but you're here, man. I appreciate you coming on tonight. Y'all, if you do not know, this is Dwayne James, brother here. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Just give us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and then we're going to dive into this conversation, sir.
Of course. So hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Dwayne James. Born and raised in Boston, Mass, but currently I'm living in Brooklyn, New York. I work as a therapist through the practice of social work. So I have my bachelor's and master's in social work, and with a specific focus in adolescent and adult therapy. And, you know, I've been doing it for about 5 years at this point in time. And I would tell you that, you know, this is a profession that found me, and it's been a journey. You know, it's been a beautiful journey. And I think I'm at this pivotal point now where I'm able to really see the fruits of the labor that I put in these last couple of years, in a sense, when it comes to really providing like social emotional support to specifically Black, and seeing how many Black folks I have on my caseload now when it comes to therapy and things like that, and witnessing these breakthroughs, and knowing that, you know, I'm a change agent with them when it comes to breaking these transgenerational curses that we're looking to talk about today. So,
Brother, cool. That is beautiful, man. I am so excited. You see people in here? Oh, Mike. Okay, Mike said Roxbury native here. Okay, that's what's up. So you got fam in the house, right? Y'all families probably know each other or something like that. You know how Black folks, we know each other. Less than 6 degrees. Listen, you said, I want to dig into something real quick before we get in. You said this profession found you.
Yes.
Explain that. Let us know a little bit about that. How did it find you, brother?
You know, to keep on the theme of talking about family secrets and talking about like family expectations and images and things like that. You know, I come from a Caribbean background. My family is from Jamaica, so I'm a first generation, you know, American when it comes to that.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a lot of pressure on you to kind of adhere
Yeah.
to certain expectation on what they believe and what they perceive success to be. So, you know, for me, I definitely had like my mom in my ear about, you know, you got to go to school for nursing, you got to do something in the medical field that has security and the foundation and all these things. So,
Yeah.
you know, that was like my path in the beginning when I was just like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this. And I got all the way to like my clinical rotations in nursing. I'm just like, I'm not happy. And I can't
Yeah.
for the rest of my life for the sake of saying that my parents are proud for this. There's other ways I can attempt to make them proud, you know?
Wow.
And I kind of just did a little, you know, 1-2 on the back end while I was in school and switched my major without them knowing. And it wasn't until maybe later I realized talking about.
Did they show up to the graduation? It was like School of Social Work, and they was like, "Wait a minute, hold up."
You know, talking about. I was like, that was something I had to keep to myself for a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, but I think on the later end now, I realized that like, you know, I do find joy in the profession. And when I say it found me, it was, you know, I had a phenomenal advisor, you know, who kind of took the opportunity to really know who I was and to understand who I was through my essence.
Yeah.
And through and like, you know, just on a spiritual level. And she kind of connected me with some other individuals, another Black man who was in social work at the time after school. I just, you know, it just took off from there, you know?
Yeah.
So it's amazing journey from there.
Well, we are glad you were here, man. I'm personally glad that you were here, man. As a fellow Black male MSW, man, it's a beautiful thing to see us in the building, you know, and literally in the building because you work in a school setting at this point. Yes. That's a beautiful thing. So when I connected with you, I reached out, man, like you obliged, you said, brother, I want to come on. What was it about the topic of family secrets that resonated with you? If you can just, you know, whether it's personal or even professional, what is it that resonated?
I can say, excuse me, I'm sorry. I can say on both the personal and professional level, we've all, you know, experienced or have been a witness of either knowing something that we can't talk about or being around, you know, a certain situation or whatever the case is when it comes to family secrets on a personal level. But even in the professional realm, you know, I have the opportunity to work with young adults, specifically high school students. And I think they're at such a pivotal moment in their lives. And when I work with them and I speak with them and I get to really understand them from a very different perspective from where their parents see them or where their family sees them, it's like they're seeing things and they seeing shit, you know, like that they are able to kind of make a connection to, but when it comes to addressing it, they are still kind of shunned and kind of put to the side because they're not adult enough to handle these kind of situations.
Wow. But they're being impacted by it, but not adult to talk about it.
Absolutely. They're being impacted, but not able to talk about it because you don't really know the whole story. You don't really know what's going on. But I'm not understanding that, you know, as they're entering adolescencehood, they're developing their own sense of being and their own sense of identity and thought processes. So like they need to be involved in those kind of dynamics. So I speak with you like a couple of days ago when I was mentioning to you that I have a client now who I work with in the private practice industry of my work, and he's a 14-year-old boy. He's witnessed, you know, some traumas when it comes to domestic violence and things like that at the home, and he wants to talk about it. He wants to unpack it. He wants to address it, but no one else in the family is willing to kind of give him that opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Nor is it. It's a thing that happened. It happened on this day, and then today's a new day, and we're just going to keep moving forward and not addressing it. You know. So
we know, let me say this as we embark in this conversation, all families, regardless of race, ethnicity, have secrets, right? We know that. But this show is about Black people, right? I'm unapologetically here to uplift the narratives of Black folks, to help heal Black folks and give opportunities to express our wide range of humanity, okay? So if you didn't know, if this is your first time, that's what this show is about. So I want to talk about Black families and the secrets. And I want to just dive into it and say, like, why do we keep secrets? Like, why are these generational secrets? And I'm specifically interested in that my grandma's generation, where, and here's kind of where it gets personal for me, man. You know, you look up to these people your entire life, right? It's almost as if, you know, how we, with the parentals, we kind of put them on a pedestal. And if, you know, they're providing for you, doing all this, you kind of see them as the know-all, end-all, be-all, can't do any wrong.
Yes.
Now, I'll be 40 this year. And as I am now interacting and engaging with that generation as an adult myself, you start to have some real ass conversations, right? And you begin to, with all due respect, you begin to see the flaws that these individuals, and even though we know nobody's perfect, you still kind of like, but that's granny, that's grandpa, like polished, clean, da 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 da. But there is some shit in these closets that they literally, some of them will take to their graves.
Oh yeah.
What is it about the generation that feels like we don't need to talk about that? Where does that come from?
I think you had a gentleman that that was on before me, kind of get the connection. I think
Yeah, was there. Yeah.
He hit the nail on the head when he spoke about, like, you know, it's these secrets are through like a realm of love. You know what I'm saying? Like this is the way of saying that I love you, because I don't want you to experience the things that I experienced when this secret came about, or when this thing happened. I don't want you to experience that trauma. I don't want you to experience, you know, whatever I went through. So I'm going to utilize this as a form of protecting you, right? And I think, of course, you know, we always have to assume intent over impact, right? The intention is that they want, like, I think most of the time families want to protect you from these things, but the impact is that it does far more damage to you on the does, you know, like with them thinking that this is a protective, you know, way of parenting or caregiving, right? And I think also, in addition to that, I think the older we begin to get, you know, the more we begin to realize that the people who we looked at as our heroes and as these caregivers, and then the people that kind of had to make sure that we had all of our basic necessities met, they are children themselves. They were once children, and they still had that they still had that child in them on their own, right? You know, so they also have experienced their own traumas that have created the way they think and they believe certain things. So like when we look at those stuff, it's like it has to be through a lens of compassion. I think, and I know some folks they argue against that, right? But I think for me, when especially when I speak with, you know, adults, specifically Black adults, I remember my first experience with a Black adult when I had therapy. I'm 28 years old, and my client was 45, and I was just like, how the hell am I going to connect with this person? What am I? But I had to take a moment to say, like, listen, he's a human being.
Yeah.
And he's a child, and the only thing that has changed is just this vessel that he's walking this earth in, you know. But everything that he has gone through, everything he's experienced is still at his essence, and that's who we connect with. So when it comes to even addressing secrets and things like that, or understanding why, it's understanding that, you know, this is transgenerational. And I love to bring up Dr. Joy DeGroy, who's also a Black female social worker who's doing phenomenal work when it comes to her idea of post-traumatic slave syndrome. She speaks about the idea of secrecy and it being a tactic for us to kind of maintain livelihood when our ancestors were slaves.
Right.
You know? And when we really think about it, we're not that far away from those times. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Those dynamics that still continue to pass on to us. This is cultural norms for us. You know, something that we have, like, that we can also dismantle, but it takes a lot of work, a lot of therapy. You know?
Yeah.
Practice. But that's my
I think that's excellent. You're getting a lot of hearts and stuff going on in here, and folks are really resonating with what you're talking about here. So again, I heard two things. One, protection, right? Like there's this element, the intent versus like the actual impact, right? The intent is that I love you and I want to protect you from, right? And shield you from these things. But then essentially it actually does, because we're still not, and there was the other piece, they themselves have not healed.
Oh, no.
So, right. So when you talked about like looking at them and understanding, like, you're still that little boy or that little girl that this transgression was put upon you. Okay. Repeatedly, sustained, right. In some instances, because I'm about to go somewhere in a minute and we're talking about this. But then I also heard you talk about, again, thinking about our ancestors who, like, secrecy was a means of survival.
Amen.
Like, there is the code, right? We talk about follow me to the drinking gorge, like all of the hidden messages and all these different things. But then also, like, as a form of survival, you did not relinquish information, right? But thinking about though, and I want to ask you on this, there were these instances where our women were being raped in front of their spouses, right? In front of their partners. And so the men or their partners had to witness that and endure that. But that is not something that you wanted to speak about, right? And so, you know, so there's also this piece, because somebody also put in here shame. Where does shame play into this? Because if you are the one who it's been done to you, or if you're the one who witnessed it and you felt like you did not or could not stop it or help it, where does shame play into these secrets?
Oh, of course. You know, I love to reference a lot of, like, you know, what I speak about on readings and prevalent, you know, folks in the I'm sorry, my background a little bit is like kind of messing up.
That's all right.
I really do like to sometimes just kind of privy that by saying, like, you know, I do a lot of reading when it comes to, like, Dr. Brene Brown, you know, and Brene Brown does a lot of research, shame and guilt and things like that. He has a theory that, you know, shame manifests, you know, well, secrets manifest from shame, right? And understanding the dynamic in the role of, and, you know, and role, gender roles and things like that, and expectations, what, like, that's a way for us to truly kind of process trauma. You know, when we talk about fight, flight, freeze, in a sense, sometimes flighting is also ignoring and rationalizing and pushing that side of this experience away. That's how we really, truly, and to our essence, really kind of feel like we can move forward. The only way I can move forward is to forget that it even happened and not speak about it. Which is why sometimes I'm truly compassionate with some folks who, you know, when traumatic things happen, they don't want to talk about it. Or some of those folks who, when there's arguments happening, they just shut down. It's that same dynamic, you know, for me, because that is their way, that's their coping mechanism. That's their way that they themselves and they protect their energy.
So I'm going to bring it to where also I wanted to go when you were talking about showing compassion, right? And showing compassion for these individuals who may be the keepers of these secrets. What about in the case of molestation? I'm going there, right? Because we know that that is one of the shameful secrets. That is one of the secrets that damage and destroy. You know, I opened up talking about Greenleaf, you know, the show. And even though those are fictionalized characters, those are some real ass stories, right? And in that, you know, a young girl who was brutalized by an older relative repeatedly, she actually took her own life eventually, right? And there was a hush hush, we don't want to talk about it, by the other elders in the family who knew or who had some very strong indication that this was happening. Where do we go with that when we talk about intent is to protect, but are you really trying to protect when you know this person is a predator?
Yes. Okay. So especially when it comes to molestation and things like that, like, I think off the bat, you know, for me, it's like you number one, you have to always take the side of the person assaulted, you know, period, point blank. That's my perspective when it comes to sexual assault across the board. And I had to do a lot of learning, and I had to also do a lot of unlearning to obtain that perspective as well, to be completely transparent, you know. And I think when it does come to the idea of, like, you know, families protecting the perpetrator in that sense, it's truly understanding and asking the tough questions on what are we truly trying to protect. Are we truly trying to protect the name of the family, the idea, the perception, the vision, or whatever it is that we are? And we don't want this thing. We're going to keep it in the family. I know we hear a lot of that in black families. Is whatever happens in this house stays in this house and things like that. But it's like, what happens when the things that are happening in this house is affecting me outside of this house, right? When it's affecting daily living, so it's affecting my academic performance, whatever it is. How do we address it then, right? And if our families do not have the tools to address it, then what happens to me? You know, and I think that is a huge barrier to a lot of families, like, breaking down transgenerational traumas, which is not calling out that elephant in the room, or not knowing how to. And when it is addressed, everyone tenses up, and, you know, then the person who addresses the situation is the one who then becomes the perpetrator in that, right? So like it really comes down to the essence of understanding who are we protecting, what are we protecting, and is what we are trying to protect more important than the actual livelihood of the individual that we are looking to truly like to protect and defend, you know?
So I want to say something. Apparently there's feedback.
Yes, please.
Coming through, and I can hear it when I'm speaking. So I don't know if is it maybe through there? Okay. It's not feedback for you, but it's feedback for me, but it's stopped now. So whatever you did is perfect. But I want to pull out something, protecting the family name. Now, this is something that I've always thought about too, because listen, my grandma was like, this was the face she used to make when you was cutting up. Like, boy, if you don't, and my grandma, she ain't never spanked me. But let me tell you, man, that lady had the claws of death. These things right here. And if she got you right here, I ain't need no spanking, because I was like, you better act right. But it was this piece on like, before we go in this store, before we go in this church, before, you know, when I was growing up, you know, I was one of the saggers, right? She was like, we ain't going nowhere with you see my lips? We ain't going nowhere with them pants hanging down on your butt, right? But it was this respectability piece, this name, who we represent, right? Does that come from, in your opinion, do you think that comes from this fact of us always having to be 10 times better than the white man?
Absolutely.
Like, what's your thought on that?
Absolutely. I think that dynamic definitely comes from, you know, us trying to kind of like adhere or maintain to this like kind of like white culture standard, you know, and anything outside of that is looked at as being negative. Like when we talk about like, you know, rap music and whatever it is and what that meant, or even black folks when rap music first came out, not really appreciating it and not really embracing it because it was against the status quo of what it is. But you know, the more we began to kind of understand and unpack, it became a lens and sense of poetry in a sense, right? And now this culture has taken over the damn world. So like, so you know, I also think, you know, when it comes to respectability politics, you know, I think a couple weeks ago there was like this thing trending where a group of black men in Harlem, New York, decided to do a protest and dressed up in like nice.
Yeah. So several of my homies were in that. They were in that.
And the pushback that was received from that was like, what message were we trying to send? You know, again, coming back to this idea of like, what are we trying to protect? What are we trying to say here? You know, and I think when it comes to those family dynamics, it's like, you know, what, like me sagging my pants, what does that say about me? What does that say about the family? Does that mean that my family's doing a bad job on raising me because they're letting me do whatever the case is? Versus the flip side, you know, when we look at white families and then it comes to whatever they want to wear and things like that, it's far more like a liberal kind of liberated experience where they're just being free to express themselves. Yeah. You know, so it's like it's like a double-edged sword in a sense for the black community. And I do believe, because I've gotten those same kind of like, you know, and I've experienced those same encounters with my mom, where it's just like, you know, especially growing up from a Caribbean household where they're like, you know, we are not like the American quote unquote individuals, you know, we don't do those things or whatever the case is. So it's already looking at like this kind of like sense of just identity politics as well, where it's just like we don't see us like that. So we're not going to do those type of things. You're going to wear your pants around your waist. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And those kind of situations also then travel and kind of implant seeds into your mind as an adult that you still kind of try to maintain. And it's all those things, because it's sagging your pants really like that big of a deal when we really on an essence of a level, right? Well, I know some folks identify that as like sexualized behavior because of the jail culture that it derives from, or whatever the case is. But like, I think we have way bigger things to worry about than what an individual wants to wear. Because I've been, you know, back like even when I was in college, I had a professor who sagged Timbs and everything like that. And this was a dude with a PhD. Yeah. So like,
so understanding then and like taking this to the piece on like the family secrets, because just because there is someone who has committed some type of crime, or there's some type of perpetrator, or there's some type of indiscretion, I'll use the word indiscretion, that has happened within the family. If we understand the dynamics of not having to compare ourselves to the white man, or even within the community, trying to keep up with the Joneses, or to feel as though you know, this is an opportunity for us to be better than, then there might be potentially more transparency in calling a spade a spade. You know, I mean, you know, maybe I'm not saying it's all of that, but I feel like it definitely plays. There's something else in here that I want to bring up that I feel like is kind of ironic, because in my experience, my naked truth is that there is a lot of substance abuse in my family, with the men in my family in particular, which has impacted me in a great way, in how I respond to individuals that I'm connected to who may use substances in excess. But I've also noticed this coddling culture from the Black women of the men in my family, right? And I know I'm probably stepping on some toes here, so I know, but this is my show, so I'm gonna say what the fuck I want to say. But there's some coddling here that I've witnessed that I feel like perpetuates some of the behavior, and then also, again, going back to the secrets, does not call it out, doesn't say this is what's happening, to even help that individual. Because I think there is this, going back to what you said, there's this intention, I'm protecting that individual, when in essence you are actually enabling and harming that individual, right? And then there's other impacts on all of us in the family, right? A little bit about that. Have you seen that dynamic? And is there something about Black women and their sons, Black women and their grandsons, Black, you know, what's going on here?
Yes, I think overall, I've definitely seen this dynamic play out, you know, in many different routes, and even in my own personal life. You know, when I speak about, you know, like the relationship that I have with my mother, and how I'm the first to tell you, I'm the biggest mama's boy in the world, you know, so like,
shout out to the mama's boys.
You know, for me, I speak on that because at a very early age, I began to see the things that she did in order to ensure the quality of life that we had was at least like kind of on a homeostasis level at all times. We didn't really have to experience the plight of like poverty, of like hunger or whatever the case is, you know, because she made it work. She made it work through the lens as well as of just like kind of not speaking about the dynamic between the relationship that she had with my dad, that she has with my dad. But then in addition to that, when we speak about like family dynamics and family structure, you know, when it comes to an individual now, because now the relationship that we have is more of just like, not necessarily it's the whole entity of our relationship, but a component of that now is like, we speak about personal things that may impact my perception of other members in my family now, right? And with that dynamic, sometimes I have to take a moment to step back and say, this is not my reality, this is not my truth, and I still need to kind of maintain and make sure that I have my own perception of who these individuals are, right? And to speak a little bit on the idea of mothers and sons, I do think that there's truly a dynamic of protection there, and there's also a very, very big, you know, component of Black women protecting Black men, and in reality, us not doing the same in return.
Yeah, well, yes.
Being very, just putting it straight out there like that.
Absolutely, yes.
We need to do a hell of a better job at doing that. But like I always try to privy this back to understanding and into the concepts of like of slave trauma and just kind of like transgenerational traumas and what we've expected, and understanding why, you know, mothers have to protect their sons and things like that, right? And understanding the dynamic of like, sometimes when we look at like men, in a sense, mothers try to protect their sons and try to groom their sons into the men that they wanted them to be, that they wanted their husband or who their significant other partner to be like. You know, and sometimes we have that parentified kind of like dynamic, or sometimes I can't keep the term correctly, but it's something along the lines of just like how sometimes women try to put their sons in the role of what their husbands are.
Yes.
You know, and other is just need that kind of that balance or that end of that education, right? So I think all of these again just boil back down to trauma. It boils back down to shit that we have experienced that we have not yet addressed, because we sometimes even hold our own secrets within ourselves that we don't even want to address yet.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think that's kind of on that dynamic.
Absolutely. Dwayne, this is great, man. I'm already like, I got vibes and chills over here, brother. And I see everybody in here is really digging it. And we're doing a part 2. So just for y'all folks that are tuning in, listen, we're going to continue the conversation. We actually have a question here, and I want to pull this question up. Here we go. Let's see. Is there a space for I'm assuming black male shame? Is there a space for black male shame? Alicia, thank you for that question, who is also a fellow social worker. I miss you, baby girl. I know Texas got you, but I need you back here in New York. But anyway, go ahead. Is there a space for black male shame?
Yes, there's a space for black male shame, and I think we begin to tap into this component or this idea of toxic masculinity when we talk about that, right? Where if I express emotion, if I express shame or guilt or whatever the case is, it's a symbol of weakness, right? Because I always need to have it together. I need to keep it together. Behind closed doors, when I'm with my significant other, then that's when I can sometimes release and kind of unpack whatever the case is. But aside from that, I need to always keep it together. But then what are our children seeing? What are our nieces and nephews seeing? What are folks seeing who are looking at us as like a catalyst of change, or looking at us as like a gauge of what normalcy is?
Yeah.
The adult males in my life expressing shame or guilt, or, oh, I am wrong for this, then where do I learn that from? Right? Yeah. There's definitely space for shame, but I think it has to be done in a space where it is safe.
Yeah.
It has to be done with folks who you feel safe with, who you trust.
Yeah.
To really build that muscle, because it is a muscle that needs to be built. I mean, I can tell you, for me, it's something that I still kind of like struggle with, in a sense. I don't want to speak about everything all the time because, number one, like, friends are not my diary, you know what I'm saying? But in the same breath, I do believe that if you're going to walk the walk, you got to talk the talk too.
Yeah.
You want to talk the talk, you got to walk the walk, vice versa. It is. And even in addition to the aspect of shame, it's like, what are we really trying to kind of hide? What are we really trying to kind of prevent ourselves from showing? Where's this vulnerability? What is this vulnerability stopping us from seeing, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of my dynamic. And there's amazing resources out there. There's amazing stuff like that out there on social media that really kind of tackle this work and things like that too, when it comes to men and talking about vulnerability and things like that too. So
and towards the end of the show, when we kind of start wrapping up and maybe some steps towards healing, because there's somebody on here that needs to hear this tonight. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna talk about that. But I'm about to go there. So all y'all church folks, I'm one of them. I was raised in the church, but we're about to go here, especially since you're talking about shame. I think one of the great perpetuators of secrets is the Black church. Okay. All right. So here's the thing, man. And especially when we're talking about, males, Black men, spaces of vulnerability. In many instances, there's a lot of suppression that happens because of the Black church. Specifically, I'm a Black gay man, right? But I know growing up, like, it was very, very apparent for me that was not of God, right? And so there are many individuals in the church in leadership positions, pastors, deacons, trustees, you can go on down the line, because the choir directors, I was one of the gay choir directors, right? We always get the bad rap, but there's these other individuals in the church who cannot live their true, authentic self because of what the church says about it. And therefore they play these feelings, they play these desires, they play these intrinsic emotions out in the form of abuse onto not even just molestation, but if they are in marriages, I have seen physical abuse of the women and or children as a result of the anger and the suppression. But people know it. Here's the deal. People know it. They whisper about it, they so on and so on, and nobody releases anybody from that shame or releases anybody from that prison of just being themselves under the guise of being right in the eyes of God. That's real personal for me.
Yeah. Continue. I don't know if you.
I'm done, brother. Your turn.
Like, I'm like getting goosebumps like listening to you say that, because that you hit the nail on the head. And I think as you were asking the question, you were also answering it in a sense. And it's like, number one, like, there are so many dynamics when it comes to a human being, in a sense, and I think sometimes, which is God forgive me if my mother ever heard me say this, but it's like, you know, when it comes to religion and when it comes to, you know, Christianity, I think sometimes we forget that we kind of have to separate ourselves as an individual from, you know, our religious practices. It's a part of us, and it's not. And I think a lot of folks will go against that. They'd be like, no. But like,
Think that. Come on. Yeah.
Truly is like, okay, for example, just to kind of backtrack a little bit, I have a client who is a white Jewish man. And the conversations that we have about identity and the things that are happening in the Jewish community mirror what I have seen happen in the Christian community and the Black Christian community.
Yeah. Yeah.
When it comes to secrecy, when it comes to molestation, when it comes to physical and sexual abuse, all those type of things, right? And I think the component that I always come to kind of like revert back to is this idea of like, we can separate ourselves and we can still be those things, and we can still see those things that we have held near and dear and true to us, right? But for me, I would tell you, number one, that's one of the main reasons why I had to step away from the church. Like I could continue to see the hypocrisy of you up there saying whatever the case is and putting on this facade on a Sunday, but then I got some friends tell me that they seen you on Grindr and Jacked and shit like that, you know. You know, so I was like, I could not kind of put those two together for me in a sense. And I think, you know, for me as well, it's also just like keeping that energy in and trying to kind of maintain this idea of God. Again, what are we protecting? It's like that. I think when it comes to the secrecy, it's always that's like my essence of the question. It's just like me keeping the secret to myself. What am I trying to protect? What am I trying to prevent from being revealed? What is it? If this is to be revealed, what will this mean for me? What will this challenge and break down this, you know, will this challenge and break down this image that I have built up for so long? Yeah. And if it does, then who am I at the essence of that? And I don't know themselves enough to know that, like, if all these things were stripped away from me, who will I actually be? Or what will I actually be? So I these things that happen, these traumas that happen, these human interactions that happen, these urges, whatever the case is that end up coming towards us, they happen, we experience them, but that does not fit into the status quo of what I wanted my life to look like or be like, right? And I think that is one of the biggest components that is in the Black church, and I think it's also one of the biggest components that's pushing a lot of Black, you know, millennials away from the church as well, is because now we are finding alternative routes to that self-actualization that we have sought through religion, which is through therapy, which is through talk therapy, which is through all these different realities now, where we're beginning to question and we're beginning to feel affirmed. Because there's nothing worse than you sitting in a space where you feel like, damn, they're talking about me and they're putting so much shame against something that I have no idea that I'm experiencing or that I'm still trying to work through. What does that do for me now? Right? So that's kind of my take on the dynamic of that.
No, I definitely appreciate that, and I think we got another question here before I make any other comments. Let's see. Oh, we got another one. What do you see yourself / want to be? I think that was more so a comment, just to kind of like what you were saying versus more of a question. You know, what do you see yourself as what you want to be, right? And I think you had brought that up as like, what are you protecting? So you're protecting this image, you're protecting this facade. I think there's also, you're protecting this position, right? And going back to the church, I'm thinking about like, if you expose what the pastor did to you, you are now bringing down this institution or this position, right? And it's not the person like who is the perpetrator. So it is sad that I've seen individuals who will protect a position at the expense of their child.
I have a great story about that, honest. Without saying names, I have a woman. She's a phenomenal woman who's been a mentor for me since college, and she's heavily involved in the church, and she actually utilizes a lot of aspects of divinity in her therapeutic practice. And she told me a story one time of her being in church, and she went to Marshall's a couple like Sundays prior to, and got like this little skirt. She was so excited to wear it and things like that. Wore the skirt to church, and she realized when she sat down, the skirt was a little bit shorter than she expected. And she then gets called out because the pastor of the church felt like she was being sexualized, or she was sexualizing herself towards him. So what ends up happening is now she is the kind of the center of the conversation about being too loose, being fast, you know, all these kind of things, where the only dynamic was, wow, I'm so excited to wear this garment that makes me feel good, that makes me feel excited, to make me look forward to, you know, coming into this place of worship.
Yeah.
But the narrative and that dynamic is now switched just by one just by one kind of like perception, right? Not knowing that that perception is predatory behavior, you know. I have a pastor now that we are looking at that is expressing predatory behavior, but we are not holding accountable. We are holding the young girl.
Yeah.
You know, and what message is that now sending? So again, now when we talk about transgenerational trauma and talking about holding secrets, why would I now want to say anything to come and move forward with and knowing that chances are I will be the perpetrator in this situation that I'm
Absolutely. 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 We got another question here. Let's see what's going on. Okay. Okay, so I'm not going to come to that one only because that's more of God created us, why is it frowned upon? Okay, so only reason why I'm not going to come to those two questions, and those two questions are amazing, but it's a different topic, and I don't want us to derail us in this piece. So for the person who sent it, you know who you are. I love you. We're going to save that for a different show. Okay, we're going to save that question for a different show. But I want to stick here. We've got about 10 minutes left in the show. And I want you to talk a little bit about, because you work with adolescents. And I want us just to talk a little bit about what the impact you are seeing in your practice from these, you know, family secrets, so on and so forth. What is happening with our young people, and how are they responding to what's being imposed upon them, basically, or withheld from them, but they get the brunt of it?
I see a lot of depression. I see a lot of early onset signs of anxiety. I see a lot of substance abuse, you know, younger and younger, like, you know, to the point where I'm it's like 14-year-olds, you know, talking about having like popping Percocets at this point, you know what I'm saying? And I think majority of the reason why those things are happening and there's an uptick in that is because these children are not being seen and heard in a sense, right? I think things are happening all around them, and they still, you know, to no fault of their own, have this perception of just being a child and being too naive, not realizing that, you know, we are in a far different environment than we were in years ago when we're growing up. So if they are not going to find the answers from you, they will find it online. They'll find it from other adults. They'll find it from their friends who spoke to another friend who got this from another friend. And that's when this cycle of traumatic experience begins to kind of just trickle down into a snowball effect, right? And I think a huge way to address that is to talk to your kids, right? To listen to what they are saying, because they are seeing the things that are happening. They see it. You're in denial if you think that, you know, your child does not see that, you know, daddy is, you know, creeping up and down, or like coming in 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and what that or whatever the case is, or the this and then that, you know. And so you trying to protect those things is just driving a deeper, like, you know, wedge between the relationship, because now what they are realizing is that they cannot trust you. They cannot trust you to be, you know, vulnerable. They cannot trust you to be truthful. And if they cannot trust you, then they will not be able to bring their full selves towards you now, because they don't think that you'll be able to hold that truth for them, you know. So for me, a lot of the work that I'm doing with kids is through just like just trauma therapy, you know, them talking to me about situations that have happened at home that their parents don't even know that they're aware of. And helping them process those things, because they're not in a space at this point in time in their lives for them to even address it with their families, you know. And I think, you know, a huge, you know, component of that, in addition to like these students witnessing these children, I should say, I keep saying students, but these children, I should say, witnessing these things, is that it's like setting them up on a fast track to adulthood now. It's like really adultifying them.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that can be counteracted just with authentic and raw communication.
Yeah.
understanding that like there's no right or wrong way. It's, I mean, there's a different dynamic between you talking to a 2-year-old about, you know, daddy cheating versus you talking to your 14-year-old high school freshman student about relationship dynamics. Because what that then ends up doing is they will then see like, we don't speak about relationships, we don't talk about these type of things. Whatever happens in this dynamic, we don't speak about it, and that's a healthy relationship.
Yeah. Coach TJ Jennings said, how can parents be proactive instead of reactive with conversations with younger children? And I'm going to say, let me ask you this, just put that in there, especially if you, the parent, who that secret you haven't processed and it's painful for you to talk about or face, that I'm going to put that in there too, how they can be proactive versus reactive.
Therapy. It's like therapy, like that's it. You know, I think we are truly at a pivotal point in the dynamic of Black folks in therapy, and I think we have to capitalize off of that as much as possible. There's family therapy, there's couples therapy.
So I want to just pause here for a moment, because I've had to deal with this in the space of working in the mental health field, and let me know if you disagree. But I've always been an advocate for therapy, but understanding that like there's an element of privilege involved in accessing therapy at times. There are, right? There are free resources in certain communities, so on and so forth. My church has a mental health clinic with a wait list of X amount of, you know, weeks long, because there is so much need, yet not enough clinicians that can meet the need. So what do we say to those individuals who may not even, you know, therapy is not even within their realm or their scope right now?
And I would love to get into that a little bit later, but I do agree with you. And there's many initiatives, you know, that's attempting to kind of combat that, because, you know, therapy can be also seen as a luxury, or not everyone has access to it as well. But I would say in the interim of that, if your children are in school, they have access to those resources as well when it comes to counselors and things like that. So it's really advocating at this point in time. Yeah. You know that you cannot maintain or provide these things through that dynamic in a school setting, specifically for your children. I would definitely say advocate for that. Number one. Yeah. For a reason, and I think a lot of parents are not aware of it, so therefore they don't advocate for it, or relationship with school officials is broken. Again, when it comes to that dynamic of trust, where I do not want my child to meet this person now because I don't know now ACS is in my house and all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But it's also a relationship of what we entail that to be. We look at, I think once we change this idea of looking at therapy as this thing that's going to get us caught up versus looking at it as a supplementary resource to help the child, you know.
That's big, because the pushback that I got, again, is what you said. When I was doing my field placement in a school in Brooklyn, a lot of times it's like, we don't invite that into my house. Like, don't invite that. Don't even bring that attention over here, you know, so on and so forth. So I definitely understand that. I want to go back to, again, Coach TJ Jennings' question. And so I put my own little spin on it, but I just he was saying, how can you be proactive in the conversation with your younger kids versus reactive?
I think being proactive in a sense when it comes to having conversations with children is giving them the space to speak their truth, regardless of how hard it might sound, and instilling time. Like, you know, for example, you know, I meet with one family every week, and a dynamic that has been implemented into their family is that they have dinner together at least once a week. And that form of having dinner like once a week, or just having a sit down once a week, has began to change the dynamic of their relationship, because now, you know, the children are being able to be seen and heard, and decisions are not being made, you know, for them, they're being made with them, you know. And I think once you do begin to kind of instill this idea of like normalcy and routine with communication, then that's going to set up the building blocks in a sense to create this kind of inclusive environment. So when things do happen, it creates an environment that seekers do not need to kind of be because open communication is happening all the time. You know, there's so many different things. Like there's a tool that that I've also recommended to parents of like early adolescent children, where like it's like a refrigerator magnet, and depending on the mood of the day, that's where the child will put that thing. So they don't need to do a lot of talking.
Yeah.
No,
but communication is happening. Communication is happening. Listen, our hour has gone by like that, right? So we've got a minute left, brother. Like, this is what happens on the Naked Truth Experience. I want to just first thank you, Dwayne, man. Like, brother, you have been truly a blessing to this whole situation here. I always tell people this is a spirit-led thing. We don't even talk like that. I reached out to you. I've been following you, brother, and you obliged, and here you are today, just like really blessing us. Where can people find you?
Yeah. So you can find me on social media, on Instagram at Wayne Ambition.
Yeah.
Yes_ambition. I'm also, you can find me on my website, www.dwayneajames.com, and where you can see everything that I'm doing when it comes to public speaking engagements, to photography, to my brand, money.
Come on, mogul.
Wow, Dwayne James, thank you, man. As watching that conversation back over again really brought some things up for me, and might even try to get you on our talk back tomorrow. I can't even make any promises, but because I haven't asked him yet, but we'll see. But anyway, I want to thank you for tuning in to this first installment of our Throwback December episodes, all Thursdays in December. And I want to remind you to please like, share, and subscribe. It's very, very important that we go ahead and do that. And then secondly, make sure that you are hopping into our Facebook group, The Naked Truth Experience. As I always say, please have a wonderful night, and we'll see you next Thursday.